Hello everybody and welcome back to the FinTech Times. We're here at Money 2020 Europe, where I'm joined by Ricardo Ampo, the founder and CEO of Incode. Ricardo, how are you?
Good, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, thank you very much for taking us up on the offer. What do you think of 2020, Money 2020 so far?
It's fabulous. We've always been fans of Money 2020. We were already 2 times in the US, and this is our first time in Europe.
Yeah.
And it's such a good show from a business perspective, and also we love the style and how it was produced, particularly in Europe, is really impressive.
They've done really well with it. Well, before we get on to our conversation, why don't you tell us a little bit about Incode and about where you've come from, who you are, what you do? Why don't you share about
Absolutely. Well, as you know, I'm founder and CEO of Incode. I founded Incode in 2015, and what we do is we build software to verify people's identity, mostly online, although lately there's been also some incredibly interesting offline use cases. And so we use AI to be able to establish trust before you open a bank account, before you go to a stadium, before you want to get into the airport, or before you schedule your surgery at the hospital. And we're based in San Francisco with offices in Europe and Latin America. We've recently raised $225 million from world-class investors, SoftBank and GA and a number of banks. And we're excited because even though we have already a number of customers in Europe, this is our official launch into the European market. And we think that Money 2020 is a great platform to do that.
Oh, well, fantastic. We'll get a bit more into your European expansion a little bit later. But I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to talk with your team just before the interview. And they told me that there was a very funny story about how your company Incode came into being. Can you share a bit more about that story with us?
Yeah, I mean, Incode was, when we founded Incode, we didn't start it in identity. We were a consumer app that would automatically share photos with facial recognition. So essentially, it would start scanning your photos with your consent, of course, and then it would start sending those photos to your friends. So you start getting your photos that your friends never sent to you in a fully automatic way. And so if you can imagine, we couldn't have false positives because we would be sending your photos to someone else. And so from the day one, with Jovan, my co-founder, and a great team of engineers, we built a great biometric engine that will run directly on the phone. We also built a lot of expertise in how do you create these kind of very cool, very smooth mobile applications. And so, yeah, we were solving something no one did. At some point, actually, Apple took us into a roadshow showcasing how you could do AI on the iPhone, where that was something that not a lot of companies were doing. And then in 2018, we pivoted to identity.
Well, that sounds quite the journey, and you've really sort of come into full force within the industry. So that's a really fantastic origin story. Thank you for sharing that. So you're very much within you've landed very much within the biometric payment space in terms of the use of the technology, and we've seen security become more and more of a pressing issue, and not only security, but know your customer verification, all that. How have you seen the appetite for that evolve since you started the company? And do you ever see traditional password technology, 12 characters and a special character? Do you ever see that sort of technology becoming redundant?
Look, this industry has become much more relevant, particularly after COVID. So when people didn't want to go to the bank or didn't want to go to see a doctor, do a notary, they needed to see that notary online. The need for creating trust on the digital world became really important. And so biometric technology is important in the sense that you are your identity, right? Whether if you compare that, again, a password, which is something that you know and can be stolen, the same thing with a device, you become your own identity, and the biometric became kind of the gold standard to verify yourself online. And so it's more relevant than ever. Our market went from 5 billion to 60 billion globally, and the use cases just keep expanding. We've been expanding from first, of course, as you mentioned, banks and fintechs, but lately it's been stadiums, how you make sure there's more trust when you go into the stadiums. Healthcare is an incredible market. The same thing, because you need that level of security. So it's much more relevant than ever.
Just to stay on that sort of point with the use cases outside the financial services, because I think with biometrics we often associate it with opening a bank account or with handling really sensitive financial information. But you mentioned at the beginning of the interview that it had been made possible in football stadiums. Yeah. Can you tell us a bit more about that? I mean, how is it applicable to that?
Yeah. So what's happening, as you saw in the last final, that there's violence between teams, and then people are not comfortable going with their families or even just attending. The problem is that a lot of that violence exists because of anonymity. So if you can put in great identity verification technology where everything is based around privacy, so you as a consumer control your data, but then you verify your identity, you scan your ID, you scan your face, we generate a fan ID which secure the proofs that you're you, and then when you go to the stadium we use facial matching, and that's a way how we can help those environments be a lot more friendly and trustworthy.
Well, that's fantastic to see that it's in a real world example to stop violence. It goes to show how the technology can extend beyond what we usually expect from it.
Yeah.
So you've come to Europe 2020, Money 2020 in Europe, and you're a Mexican company. But am I right in saying that you have no plans to leave Europe now? Have you've announced that you're expanding into the continent?
Yeah. So we're an American company. We're based in Silicon Valley. There's a good portion of Mexican team members, American team members, and Europeans. But yeah, Europe is a fascinating market. I think first of all, it's on the forefront of identity. We think at Incode that identity is a very primitive industry where your money or the will for your house is based on a piece of paper or plastic, which literally the piece of paper is a 3,000-year-old invention by the Egyptians, where every time you have to open the bank account, you have to go through a very lengthy KYC process. And every time you go and maybe want to buy a beer, you have to give all that information to someone. We think that's primitive and incredibly repetitive. So why we're so interested in Europe is because we think it's going to be the market where our vision will crystallize. Our vision of one identity everywhere, where you become your identity, where you do this KYC process only once, and then with consent, you're able to share that verification with other banks and other companies, where things are done much more smartly with privacy. You don't have to share that much information. We think Europe is the perfect market for that, and we've had great successes with some of the biggest banks and neobanks and fintechs in Europe, and we think it's now the right time to expand aggressively.
And in terms of that sort of regional appetite of what you're describing in Europe, I mean, I fully believe that you'll do very well, and there is the market for biometrics in Europe. But do you notice any disparities regionally in the markets that you're operating into between the US and Mexico or Europe from what you're seeing now?
Yeah, there's disparities, but I think it's interesting that we as an American company, the first market was Mexico. And so in Mexico you have very low-end phones, you have people don't have the best data plans, some of them are very new users, they don't have the best cameras. So we had to solve those problems with those constraints, and that meant that we became good not just at doing great experiences with the latest iPhone, but with the lowest end Android. And so that's a big disparity, but that actually helped us build a much better product. And now that we're expanding in Europe, I would say categorically we're by far the most inclusive technology, the one with least bias, right? Where we don't use any humans, it's all technology, and so that allows for better privacy. So in the European market, the privacy is so important. We feel very confident that we can compete effectively here.
So in terms of your attendance at Money 2020 Europe, I mean, what are you hoping to get out of the show, of these 3 days?
Yeah, well, first of all, brand awareness, right? We want more companies to know about us. And one of the things that we do in shows is, less talking and more showing. So our team built a great stand with multiple demos stations, so we can actually show in real time what the product is like. And there was this comment the other day that said, hey, I'm impressed, you're giving results immediately. Our competition takes 5 to 10 minutes, and we'd like to see that. Like, with technology, only technology, and not humans in the loop, you can have much better performance in terms of speed, in terms of accuracy, in terms of fraud reduction. And so what we hope to get out of this is a lot of brand awareness, and that people come, try our product, and hopefully that helps expand more.
That's very true. I was very fortunate to be given a trial run by your team when I went to come visit your stall earlier, and it was very quick. You know, the whole process was over in like 5 minutes. There was no waiting at all, and they were telling me how there was a bit of an internet delay, but it was still very fast. For the internet in this building is all over the place.
Yeah.
So I think it's very interesting. In terms of the next stage for both the technology, biometric technology, and your company, what do you see as the next stage for you guys?
Yeah, it's very clear that privacy is the defining feature. The only way identity companies are going to be able not just to survive but thrive is if they put privacy at the center and build around it. And why is that important? Because I don't believe that the future is a future where you bring a lot of data into one place, like typically the credit unions. You're exposing people to steal PII. You're exposing people are not comfortable with that type of thing. And so what we're building a decentralized identity network. Essentially, there's silos of information everywhere. And the only reason why fraud exists is because people go to one bank, then the other bank, then the other bank, and they don't communicate between each other. So if we can connect, so instead of all those silos, and instead of bringing data together, we distribute the processing power. We make all those information silos verification nodes that we can verify against. That's a way how you can build exponentially a better product, almost eliminate identity theft. And the most important thing is still users have control of their data, and it's decentralized, and so it's the best of both worlds. So we think the future is that, and we're betting our company in it.
Well, that's fantastic. It sounds like it's going to be quite a year for Incode, and you started off in the best way possible by attending Money 2020. So it's been fantastic to meet you, Ricardo, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.